The air was thick with tension as Corporal Daxton Reed stood in the dimly lit chamber aboard the alien vessel, his pulse racing like a drumbeat. The walls shimmered faintly, pulsating with an eerie bioluminescence that seemed alive, almost sentient. He swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the moisture-rich atmosphere of the ship. Before him towered the alien queen, her form both terrifying and mesmerizing, her multifaceted eyes glinting with intelligence far beyond anything he'd ever encountered. Daxton had never imagined it would come to this. A few hours ago, he was just another soldier on patrol near the outskirts of Earth's last remaining colonies, tasked with routine reconnaissance missions. But then everything changed when their squad stumbled upon what appeared to be a derelict spacecraft buried beneath layers of ice and snow. It wasn't until they entered the craft that they realized it wasn't abandoned at all. It was waiting. Now here he was, face to face, if one could call it that, with the leader of these otherworldly beings. She loomed over him, her exoskeleton gleaming under the shifting light, mandibles twitching slightly as though itching to snap shut around something, or someone. Her voice resonated through the chamber, deep and guttural yet oddly melodic, carrying a weight that made Daxton's knees feel weak. "Watch your mouth, human," she hissed, her tone laced with venom but also something else, a flicker of amusement? Or maybe irritation. Either way, it sent shivers down his spine. Daxton clenched his fists tightly by his sides, trying desperately not to let fear take hold completely. "Hey, beauty queen," he shot back, surprising even himself with how steady his voice sounded. Where had that come from? Sure, sarcasm had always been his go-to defense mechanism, but now wasn't exactly the time for jokes. Still, there was no turning back now. The queen's massive head tilted slightly, her expression unreadable behind those cold, calculating eyes. For a moment, neither moved nor spoke. The silence between them stretched taut like a wire ready to snap. Then, without warning, she emitted a low growl that reverberated through the room, causing the very ground beneath Daxton's boots to tremble. Behind him, Lieutenant Nyla Voss shifted uneasily where she stood guard near the entrance. Her rifle was trained steadily on the queen, though Daxton knew better than anyone that weapons might not do much good against something like her. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and entirely out of their depth. Yet here they were, two humans standing defiantly before a creature who could probably squash them like bugs if she so desired. Nyla caught Daxton's eye briefly, her sharp features betraying none of the anxiety clawing at her insides. Instead, she gave him a subtle nod, a silent reminder that they were in this together, no matter how hopeless things looked. That small gesture bolstered his resolve enough to keep going. "So, Daxton began awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck as he scrambled for some semblance of composure. "You guys have Wi-Fi up here? 'Cause I gotta say, signal's kinda spotty." To his astonishment, the queen actually paused mid-growl, her head tilting further in apparent confusion. If aliens could look bemused, she certainly did right then. Even Nyla couldn't suppress a snort of laughter behind him, quickly stifling it with a cough when the queen whipped her gaze toward the sound. "You dare mock me?" the queen rumbled, her voice dripping with disdain. But there was something else lurking beneath the surface, a curiosity, perhaps? Maybe even a hint of begrudging respect for his audacity. "Mock you," Daxton replied, feigning innocence as best he could while sweat trickled down his temple. "No, ma'am. Just trying to make conversation. You know, break the ice. Literally, since we found your ship frozen solid back on our planet." For a split second, he thought he saw what might have been the alien equivalent of a smirk cross her face, or at least as close to a smirk as a creature with razor-sharp teeth and multiple jaws could muster. But just as quickly, her expression hardened again, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "You are brave, human," she said finally, her words slow and deliberate. "Or incredibly foolish. Perhaps both." "Well, bravery's subjective, isn't it?" Daxton quipped, earning another glare from the queen. This time, however, it lacked the same intensity as before. Maybe she was starting to warm up to him. Not literally, of course, because holy hell, was it getting colder in here? Before either of them could say anything more, a sudden commotion erupted from deeper within the ship. Loud metallic clangs echoed through the corridors, followed by shrill screeches that set Daxton's teeth on edge. The queen's posture stiffened immediately, her attention snapping away from him as she turned toward the source of the noise. "What's happening?" Nyla whispered urgently, lowering her rifle slightly as she glanced between Daxton and the Queen. "No clue," Daxton muttered under his breath, though loud enough for Nyla to hear. "But judging by the racket, I'm guessing it's not tea time." As if on cue, a group of smaller aliens burst into the chamber, their movements frantic and chaotic. They chattered wildly among themselves in a language that sounded like nails scraping across metal, gesturing animatedly toward the Queen. Whatever they were saying clearly alarmed her, because her entire demeanor shifted. Gone was the haughty indignation she'd shown earlier. Instead, she radiated urgency and concern. "They've breached the outer defenses," she announced grimly, addressing Daxton and Nyla directly. "Your kind has followed you here." Daxton blinked in shock. "Wait, what? We didn't bring anyone else. Our team is—" "I speak not of your immediate companions," the Queen interrupted sharply. "Another faction approaches, one far less diplomatic." At that exact moment, the distant rumble of explosions shook the ship, sending vibrations rippling through the floor. Lights flickered overhead, casting erratic shadows across the walls. Somewhere outside, the unmistakable whine of plasma cannons firing filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. "Oh great," Nyla muttered, raising her rifle once more. Because dealing with one hostile alien species wasn't enough fun already. Daxton couldn't argue with her there. As much as he hated to admit it, they were stuck smack dab in the middle of an interstellar turf war, and somehow, improbably, the fate of everyone involved now rested squarely on their shoulders. He glanced at the Queen, who was issuing rapid-fire commands to her subordinates in that harsh, grating tongue of hers. Despite the chaos unfolding around them, she remained eerily composed, every movement precise and calculated. There was something almost admirable about her poise under pressure, even if she still terrified him half to death. "Listen," Daxton said cautiously, stepping forward despite every instinct screaming at him to stay put. "If we're gonna survive this mess, we need to work together. You help us, we help you. Deal." The Queen regarded him silently for a long moment, her piercing gaze boring into him as though attempting to discern whether or not he was trustworthy. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded curtly. "Very well, human," she said, her voice tinged with reluctant acceptance. "But know this, should you betray my trust, I will personally ensure your demise." "Fair enough," Daxton replied with a nervous chuckle. "Though, can we maybe skip the personal touch next time?" Her response was a low, menacing growl that sent fresh waves of panic coursing through his veins. Yeah, probably shouldn't push his luck too far. With that uneasy alliance forged, the trio prepared to face whatever horrors awaited them outside. Little did they know, the real battle was only just beginning, and survival would require more than just courage or wit. It would demand sacrifices neither side was truly prepared to make. Somewhere amidst the chaos, Corporal Daxton Reed found himself wondering how exactly life had spiraled so wildly out of control. One minute, he was cracking bad jokes to keep himself sane. The next, he was plotting military strategy with an alien queen whose idea of diplomacy involved eating people. And yet, strangely enough, he wouldn't have traded this moment for anything. After all, how many humans could claim they'd stared death in the face, and lived to tell the tale? Well, assuming they actually survived this whole ordeal, of course. The ship shuddered violently as another explosion rocked its hull, throwing Daxton off balance. He stumbled forward, catching himself on one of the pulsating walls just in time to avoid face-planting into the alien floor. Nyla cursed under her breath, steadying herself against a nearby console while the Queen barked orders at her subordinates with increasing urgency. The smaller aliens scurried about like ants, their chittering growing louder and more frantic by the second. "Okay, Beauty Queen," Daxton said, brushing imaginary dust off his uniform as he regained his footing. "What's the plan here? Because I'm pretty sure running around screaming isn't gonna cut it." The Queen turned sharply toward him, her mandibles clicking audibly in irritation. "Silence, human. You know nothing of our ways." "Well, forgive me for not being an expert on alien warfare," Daxton shot back, unable to resist the jab even in such dire circumstances. "But if we don't figure out what's going on soon, we're all gonna end up as space debris. Before the queen could respond, one of her minions, a particularly wiry-looking creature with elongated limbs, darted over and began gesturing wildly at something on a holographic display embedded in the wall. The queen leaned closer, her expression darkening as she studied the image projected before them. It showed a swarm of sleek, insectoid ships descending upon the vessel from above, firing relentless barrages that tore through its defenses like paper. "They've breached the upper decks," the queen growled, straightening up. "We must retreat to the core chamber immediately." "Retreat?" Nyla interjected, incredulous. "You mean run away? That's your big plan." "It is strategic withdrawal, not cowardice," the queen snapped, rounding on her. "The core contains vital systems necessary for survival. If they destroy it, we are all lost, including you." Nyla opened her mouth to argue further but hesitated, glancing at Daxton. He gave her a slight nod, silently urging her to let it go for now. As much as neither of them trusted the queen, or liked taking orders from her, they didn't have many options. Staying put would only get them killed faster. "Fine," Nyla relented, lowering her rifle slightly. "Lead the way, your majesty." The queen narrowed her multifaceted eyes at the sarcastic title but chose not to comment. Instead, she motioned for them to follow as she led the group deeper into the labyrinthine corridors of the ship. The air grew colder with each step, and the bioluminescent glow dimmed until they were navigating almost entirely by instinct. Every so often, distant blasts echoed through the halls, accompanied by the ominous groan of metal twisting under pressure. As they moved, Daxton couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Not just the obvious fact that they were fleeing for their lives aboard an alien spacecraft, but something subtler. The queen seemed unusually tense, even for someone facing imminent invasion. Her movements were deliberate, almost mechanical, and she kept glancing over her shoulder, at him specifically, as though expecting him to do something unexpected. "So, Daxton ventured after several minutes of tense silence. "Who exactly are these guys attacking us?" "Friends of yours." The queen paused mid-stride, her body stiffening visibly. For a moment, he thought she might ignore the question entirely. But then she turned slowly, fixing him with a gaze so intense it felt like she was peeling back layers of his soul. "They are no friends of mine," she replied coldly. "They are scavengers, opportunists who seek to claim what is not theirs. Long ago, my kind sought peace with them, but they betrayed us. Now, they hunt us to extinction." Daxton raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you've got quite the family drama going on here." "This is no jest, human," the queen hissed, stepping closer until her towering form loomed over him once again. "If they capture you alive, they will dissect you piece by piece, learning everything they can about your species before eradicating it." "Well, when you put it that way," Daxton muttered, swallowing hard. "Guess we'd better stick together then, huh?" To his surprise, the queen actually nodded in agreement. "Indeed. For now, our fates are intertwined." Just as those words left her mouth, the corridor ahead erupted in chaos. A squad of the invading aliens burst through a collapsed section of the wall, their sleek, armored bodies glistening menacingly in the dim light. They moved with terrifying speed, weapons already trained on the group. Without hesitation, Nyla raised her rifle and fired, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the narrow passageway. The queen reacted instantly, lashing out with claws extended. She swiped at the nearest attacker, sending it sprawling backward with a guttural shriek. Her subordinates joined the fray, lunging at the invaders with reckless abandon. Amidst the melee, Daxton found himself pressed against the wall, frantically searching for anything he could use as a weapon. His hand closed around a jagged piece of debris, and he hurled it blindly at the nearest enemy, striking it squarely in the head. "Not bad, soldier boy," Nyla shouted over the din, reloading her rifle with practiced efficiency. "Now keep moving." Ducking low, Daxton scrambled forward, dodging flailing limbs and bursts of energy fire. The queen fought with ferocious precision, her every strike calculated to maximize damage. Yet despite her prowess, the invaders kept coming, their numbers overwhelming. Just when it seemed like they might be overrun, reinforcements arrived, in the form of more of the Queen's warriors pouring in from side passages. For a brief moment, hope flickered in Daxton's chest. Maybe they stood a chance after all. But that hope was quickly extinguished when one of the invaders, a hulking brute twice the size of the others, charged directly at the Queen, wielding a massive plasma blade. Before anyone could react, the blade slashed downward, narrowly missing her head but slicing cleanly through one of her antennae. The Queen let out a deafening roar of pain and fury, stumbling backward as greenish blood oozed from the wound. Her attackers seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage relentlessly. Sensing the tide turning, Daxton grabbed a discarded weapon from the floor and fired wildly into the crowd, buying precious seconds for the Queen to recover. "Get to the core!" she bellowed, clutching her injured antenna. "I will hold them off." "No way!" Daxton yelled back, ducking behind cover as another blast singed the air above his head. "We're not leaving you behind." "You must," the Queen insisted, her voice tinged with desperation. "Without the core intact, none of this matters." Nyla grabbed Daxton's arm, pulling him toward the exit. "She's right, Dax. We have to go." Reluctantly, Daxton allowed himself to be dragged away, casting one last glance over his shoulder at the Queen. She stood tall amidst the chaos, her remaining antenna twitching furiously as she unleashed a barrage of attacks on her foes. Even wounded, she radiated power and determination, a force of nature unwilling to yield. As they reached the entrance to the core chamber, however, Daxton noticed something peculiar etched into the doorframe, a series of symbols that looked eerily familiar. Upon closer inspection, he realized they matched markings he'd seen earlier during their initial exploration of the ship, markings associated with ancient human artifacts discovered centuries ago. "What the hell?" he murmured, tracing the glyphs with trembling fingers. "Why does this look like Earth tech?" Nyla frowned, leaning in for a better look. "You think there's a connection between them and us?" Before Daxton could respond, the doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a vast chamber filled with glowing conduits and humming machinery. At the center stood a massive crystalline structure pulsating with energy, its surface refracting light in dazzling patterns. But what truly caught Daxton's attention was the figure standing beside it, a humanoid silhouette cloaked in shadows. "Who's that?" Nyla whispered, raising her rifle cautiously. The figure stepped forward, revealing itself to be human. Or at least, mostly human. Its features were distorted, almost grotesque, as though it had been altered by some unnatural force. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its skin shimmered with an oily sheen. "You shouldn't be here," the figure rasped, its voice echoing unnaturally. "This doesn't concern you." "Oh great," Daxton muttered, tightening his grip on his makeshift weapon. "Another nut job to deal with." The figure tilted its head, studying them curiously. "You don't understand, do you? This war, it's been waged for millennia. And you're just pawns in a game far older than either side realizes." Before Daxton or Nyla could process those cryptic words, alarms blared throughout the chamber, signaling another wave of invaders closing in. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew louder, indicating the Queen's forces were losing ground fast. "We need answers," Nyla said firmly, leveling her rifle at the mysterious figure. "And you're going to give them to us, now." The figure smirked, raising a hand lazily. In an instant, the entire chamber was bathed in blinding light, and Daxton felt his consciousness slipping away. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the Queen bursting into the room, her expression a mixture of rage and fear. When Daxton awoke, he found himself lying on the cold floor of the core chamber, alone save for Nyla, who was already on her feet, scanning the area warily. The mysterious figure, and the Queen, were nowhere to be seen. "What happened?" Daxton groaned, rubbing his temples as he struggled to sit up. "I don't know," Nyla admitted, her voice tight with unease. "But whatever it wasn't good." As they took stock of their surroundings, they noticed subtle changes in the chamber. The conduits pulsed erratically, and the crystalline structure at the center now emitted a low, ominous hum. Whatever the figure had done, it had destabilized the core. And then, as if things couldn't get worse, a new voice crackled over the comm system, a chillingly familiar one belonging to Commander Hargrove, their superior officer back on Earth. "Corporal Reed," the voice boomed, dripping with authority. Stand down immediately. You are harboring classified information critical to humanity's survival. Surrender yourselves, or prepare to face the consequences. Daxton exchanged a wide-eyed glance with Nyla. Somehow, their mission had become infinitely more complicated. Daxton's mind raced as he stared at the comms device crackling with Commander Hargrove's voice. The weight of the situation pressed down on him like a collapsing star. He wasn't just caught between two alien factions anymore. Now humanity itself seemed to be turning against them. And what did Hargrove mean by classified information? What could possibly connect Earth, the Queen species, and those invaders? Surrender yourselves, Hargrove repeated, his tone icy and devoid of any sympathy. You violated protocol, Corporal. Your actions have jeopardized everything. Nyla gripped her rifle tighter, her jaw clenched in frustration. Protocol? Are you kidding me? We didn't ask for this mess, she shouted into the empty chamber, though it was clear Hargrove couldn't hear her rant. Daxton shook his head, trying to piece together the fragments of the puzzle swirling around them. Something about the glowing glyphs etched into the core chamber's walls, the strange hybrid figure, and the Queen's cryptic warnings all pointed to one conclusion. Whatever secrets lay within this ship weren't meant for human eyes, or maybe they were never supposed to leave these walls alive. We can't trust anyone right now, Daxton muttered under his breath, more to himself than to Nyla. Not even our own side. And yet here we are, stuck playing diplomat while the universe decides whether or not to blow us up, Nyla replied dryly, scanning the room again for signs of movement. What do we do next, genius? Before Daxton could answer, the crystalline structure at the center of the chamber began to pulse faster, its once steady glow now erratic and unstable. A low-pitched whine filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Sparks flew from nearby conduits, and the temperature in the room plummeted sharply, making their breath visible in the frosty air. This doesn't look good, Daxton said, taking an instinctive step back. Whatever that thing is, I think it's about to go boom. Nyla nodded grimly, her gaze darting toward the entrance where the Queen had disappeared moments earlier. If she's still alive, she might know how to stop it. But if she's not, then we're on our own, Daxton finished for her, already moving toward the exit. Let's find her, and fast. They sprinted through the winding corridors of the alien vessel, dodging debris and avoiding pockets of skirmishes between the Queen's forces and the invaders. Every step felt heavier than the last, as though the very fabric of reality was unraveling beneath their feet. The ship groaned ominously, its structural integrity failing under the relentless assault outside. As they rounded a corner, they stumbled upon a scene that stopped them dead in their tracks. The Queen stood over the body of the hulking brute who had injured her earlier, her claws dripping with greenish ichor. Around her lay several of the invaders, motionless and broken. Despite her apparent victory, she looked worse than ever, her exoskeleton cracked in places, her movements sluggish and labored. "You fools!" she growled when she saw them approach. "Why have you returned? Did I not order you to secure the core?" "We tried," Nyla snapped, lowering her weapon slightly but keeping it trained on the Queen. "But your precious core is acting like it wants to implode. Any idea why?" The Queen hesitated, her multifaceted eyes narrowing as she studied them intently. For a moment, it seemed like she might refuse to answer. Then, with a weary sigh, she spoke. "The core is not merely a power source, it is a repository of knowledge, memories, and something else. Something ancient. It reacts to those who seek to claim it without understanding its purpose." "Great," Daxton muttered sarcastically. "So basically, it's throwing a tantrum because we walked in uninvited." "In essence, yes," the Queen replied, her tone laced with irritation. "But there is more at play here. That creature you encountered in the core chamber, it has tampered with the system. If left unchecked, it will corrupt the core entirely." "And then what happens?" Nyla asked, her voice tense. "The resulting explosion would obliterate this sector of space," the Queen explained grimly, "including both fleets currently engaged in battle above us." Daxton exchanged a worried glance with Nyla. They'd gone from being pawns in an interstellar war to potentially responsible for ending it, and countless lives along with it. No pressure. So, let me get this straight, Daxton said, running a hand through his hair. We need to fix your magical alien crystal before it blows us all to kingdom come. Got it. Easy peasy. The Queen gave him a look that suggested she was considering eating him after all. There may be a way to stabilize it, she admitted reluctantly. But it requires accessing the core directly. Doing so will expose whoever attempts it to immense energy fluctuations. Mortal beings such as yourselves would not survive. Well, that's comforting, Nyla muttered, rolling her eyes. Guess it's up to you, Your Highness. I cannot, the Queen replied sharply. My connection to the core has been severed due to my injuries. Only someone untainted by allegiance to either faction can interface with it safely. Daxton blinked. Wait, hold on. You're saying I have to do it? You are the only viable option, the Queen confirmed, her expression unreadable. Unless you prefer extinction. Oh sure, no big deal, Daxton quipped, forcing a nervous laugh. Just another day in the life of Corporal Daxton Reed, professional alien tech whisperer. Despite his bravado, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on him. This wasn't some half-baked mission where failure meant a slap on the wrist and a lecture from command. Failure here meant annihilation, not just for him and Nyla, but for everyone aboard the ship, both friend and foe alike. All right, fine, he said finally, squaring his shoulders. Tell me what I need to do. The Queen gestured for them to follow her back to the core chamber. Along the way, they passed through sections of the ship that had clearly seen better days. Walls were scorched black, floors buckled and warped, and the air reeked of ozone and burnt metal. The sounds of combat grew fainter as they moved deeper into the vessel, replaced by an eerie silence that made Daxton's skin crawl. When they reached the core chamber, the crystalline structure was pulsing wildly, casting distorted shadows across the walls. The Queen approached it cautiously, her movements deliberate despite her injuries. She extended one clawed hand toward the surface of the crystal, causing it to emit a soft hum in response. To stabilize the core, you must place your hands upon it and allow it to read your intentions, she instructed, stepping aside to make room for Daxton. It will test you, it will probe your mind, your soul. Do not resist. Trust in yourself, or you will fail. Trust in myself, huh? Daxton echoed, swallowing hard. Funny, nobody's ever told me that before. He glanced at Nyla, who offered him a small, reassuring smile. You've got this, Dax. Just don't screw it up. Thanks for the vote of confidence, he muttered, taking a deep breath as he stepped forward. His heart pounded in his chest as he placed his palms flat against the cool, smooth surface of the crystal. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, tendrils of light began to snake outward from the point of contact, wrapping around his arms like ethereal vines. The sensation was indescribable, a mixture of warmth and electricity that coursed through his veins, filling him with a sense of awe and terror simultaneously. Images flashed before his eyes, distant stars, ancient civilizations, battles fought long before humans ever set foot on the moon. He saw glimpses of the Queen's people, their rise and fall, their desperate struggle to protect the core from those who sought to exploit it. And then he saw Earth, his home, but different. Older. Stranger. A voice echoed in his mind, neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel. Who are you? It demanded, reverberating through every fiber of his being. I'm nobody special, Daxton thought back, unsure if the entity could hear him. Just a guy trying to keep everyone, including myself, from dying today. The voice paused, as though considering his response. Your kind is young, fragile. Yet you possess courage. Why? Because, Daxton hesitated, searching for words. Because giving up isn't an option. Not when there's still a chance to make things right. For a moment, the images stopped. The light surrounding him dimmed, and he feared he'd failed. But then, the crystal emitted a single brilliant flash, bathing the entire chamber in radiant white light. When it faded, the pulsing had slowed to a steady rhythm, and the ominous hum had subsided. It is done, the Queen announced, her tone tinged with surprise. You have succeeded. Daxton staggered backward, his legs threatening to give out beneath him. Nyla rushed to his side, steadying him as he struggled to catch his breath. "How do you feel?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "Like I just ran a marathon inside my brain," he replied weakly, managing a shaky grin. "But hey, at least we're not dead yet." Before anyone could celebrate, however, the chamber doors slid open with a hiss. Standing in the doorway was the mysterious hybrid figure, flanked by a contingent of the invading aliens. Its glowing eyes locked onto Daxton, and it smiled, a cold, calculating expression that sent chills down his spine. "You've meddled enough, human," it said, its voice layered with menace. "Step away from the core, or watch your world burn." Behind him, the Queen tensed, ready to fight. Nyla raised her rifle, aiming squarely at the figure's chest. But Daxton knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. Or so it seemed. As the standoff unfolded, Daxton noticed something peculiar. The core's light had begun to shift, responding to the presence of the invaders. It pulsed brighter, almost imperceptibly, as though warning them to stay back. An idea sparked in his mind, one so reckless it might actually work. "Hey, beauty queen," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "Think this thing can multitask?" The Queen tilted her head, confused. "What are you suggesting?" Instead of answering, Daxton turned back to the hybrid figure, raising his hands in mock surrender. All right, he said loudly, feigning defeat. "You win. But before you start blowing things up, maybe you should check your math." The figure frowned, its glowing eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Explain yourself." With a sly grin, Daxton tapped the side of his temple. "This core? Yeah, it's smarter than it looks. And guess what? It knows exactly who's been messing with it." The Queen caught on immediately, her mandibles clicking in approval. Together, they watched as the core's light surged violently, enveloping the invaders in a blinding wave of energy. Screams filled the chamber as the hybrid figure and its followers crumpled to the ground, incapacitated, or worse. When the light faded, silence fell over the room. The Queen regarded Daxton with newfound respect, her earlier disdain replaced by something akin to admiration. "You are full of surprises, human." "Yeah, well, don't get used to it," he replied with a shrug, wincing as his knees finally gave out. Nyla caught him again, helping him sit down against the wall. As the adrenaline wore off, exhaustion hit him like a freight train. But even as his vision blurred and darkness crept in at the edges, one thought remained crystal clear. They weren't done yet. As the dust settled in the core chamber, Daxton leaned heavily against Nyla, his body drained but his spirit unbroken. The hybrid figure lay motionless on the floor, its glow extinguished like a dying star. Around them, the ship groaned as if sighing in relief, the energy fluctuations stabilizing and the once erratic hum of the core now steady and calm. The Queen stepped forward, her towering form casting a shadow over the room. She knelt beside the unconscious invaders, inspecting their lifeless forms with an almost clinical detachment. After a moment, she turned to Daxton and Nyla, her multifaceted eyes shimmering faintly with something resembling gratitude, an emotion neither human had expected from her. "You have done more than save this vessel," she said, her deep voice resonating through the chamber. "You have preserved the balance of knowledge that spans galaxies. Your courage will not be forgotten." Daxton managed a weak grin despite his exhaustion. "Yeah, well, don't mention it. Just doing my job, saving the universe one awkward conversation at a time." Nyla rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a small smile. "Still cracking jokes even after all this? You're impossible." "Impossible is kinda my thing," Daxton replied, earning a chuckle from both Nyla and, surprisingly, the Queen herself, or at least what passed for laughter among her kind, a series of low, rumbling clicks that vibrated through the air. The Queen straightened up, her posture regal once again. "It is time to end this conflict. My forces will withdraw, and I shall negotiate terms with your people, for peace." Wait, Daxton interrupted, raising a hand weakly. "Negotiate? With humans? Are you sure about that? We're not exactly known for our stellar diplomacy." The Queen regarded him thoughtfully before replying. "Perhaps. But perhaps it is time for change. Your species has shown potential. Her gaze lingered on Daxton for a moment longer than necessary, as though silently acknowledging his role in shifting her perspective. Before anyone could respond, the comm system crackled back to life. Commander Hargrove's voice boomed through the speakers, laced with urgency. Corporal Reed, Lieutenant Voss, report immediately. Reinforcements are en route, but we need confirmation of your status. Nyla glanced at Daxton, who gave her a tired nod. Go ahead, he said softly. I'll live. She hesitated for a split second before activating the communicator. Commander, this is Lieutenant Voss. Situation contained. Repeat. Situation contained. Request immediate extraction. Coordinates incoming. There was a long pause before Hargrove responded, his tone noticeably softer. Understood. Extraction team dispatched. Hold tight. As Nyla lowered the device, the Queen spoke again. We must part ways now. This ship will self-repair, but it cannot remain here indefinitely. You must leave while there is still time. Daxton struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on Nyla for support. What about you? What happens next for you? The Queen tilted her head, considering the question. My people will rebuild. And perhaps one day, we may meet again under better circumstances. That sounds nice, Daxton admitted, extending a shaky hand toward her. For what it's worth, thanks for not eating us. The Queen stared at his outstretched hand for a moment before cautiously reaching out with one clawed appendage. Instead of shaking it, she gently tapped it, a gesture of mutual respect. Thank you, Corporal Daxton Reed, for reminding me that cooperation is possible, even between the most unlikely allies. With that, she signaled to her remaining warriors, who began escorting the unconscious invaders away. As they disappeared down the corridor, the Queen cast one final glance over her shoulder before vanishing into the shadows. Moments later, the extraction team arrived, led by none other than Commander Hargrove himself. His stern expression softened slightly when he saw the state of his soldiers, exhausted, battered, but alive. Report, he barked, though without his usual harshness. Nyla took the lead, explaining everything succinctly while omitting certain details about the core and its secrets. Daxton chimed in occasionally, adding colorful commentary that earned him several raised eyebrows from the commander. When they finally boarded the transport shuttle, Daxton collapsed onto a seat, letting out a long sigh. Well, that was fun. Can we go home now? Hargrove crossed his arms, glaring down at him. Fun? You nearly got yourselves killed, and compromised Earth's security protocols in the process. But we didn't, Daxton countered, grinning despite the scolding. In fact, I'd say we saved the day. Maybe throw in a medal or two while you're at it. To everyone's surprise, Hargrove actually smirked. Don't push your luck, soldier. But, good work, both of you. As the shuttle ascended through the atmosphere, leaving the alien vessel behind, Daxton gazed out the window at the stars twinkling in the vast expanse of space. Despite everything they'd been through, the danger, the uncertainty, the sheer absurdity of it all, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Beside him, Nyla nudged his shoulder playfully. So, what's next for you, hero? He shrugged, leaning back in his seat with a contented smile. Honestly? A hot shower, a decent meal, and maybe a nap that lasts a week. After that, who knows? There's a whole galaxy out there waiting for us. And plenty more trouble where that came from, Nyla added wryly, though her tone carried no malice. Exactly, Daxton replied, closing his eyes as the shuttle soared toward Earth. But hey, if there's one thing I've learned today, it's that no matter how crazy things get, we'll figure it out, together. The shuttle broke through the clouds, revealing the blue-green orb of their home planet below. It was a sight neither Daxton nor Nyla would ever take for granted again. As sunlight streamed through the windows, warming their faces, they shared a quiet moment of triumph, a reminder that sometimes, against all odds, humanity prevails. And somewhere out there, among the stars, the alien queen watched their departure with a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, the future held promise. Not just for her people, but for all beings brave enough to reach across the divide and embrace the unknown.